so this video is going to be all about the who. And there's 3 different layers to this. So make sure you hang all the way to the end so that you know how to connect the dots. And if you haven't already watched the video that came before this of how to make sure that your profiles are set up correctly and optimized the right way, then make sure that you freeze or save this one for later and you go back and you watch that first video of account setup and settings, because that is essential. Now, I know some of you are probably like, Deborah, can you just tell us the what? What do we post? How often should we post? What's the content mixture? We can't go there yet until we figure out the who. So the next video will be more about the what. Okay, the first part of the who is you. Who are you? What is it you want to be known for? And why you? So this goes back a little bit to your origin story of like, why did you land in this role? Like, what's the change that you're trying to create? What keeps you in this industry at this point? So why you? Why do you matter? Which is something that we should really ask ourselves like every quarter is, how am I evolving or upgrading from what I knew just from 6 months ago or even a year ago? So know that when you pick this positioning, you don't have to feel like you're committed to it forever. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, especially when they're so focused on like the brand identity aspect of logos, color schemes, taglines. And we've got to first get to the business and brand purpose of why you exist in this space, and then what ultimately you're trying to achieve. So I help X achieve Y. And then we talk about the how and the strategy behind that. But you need to really think about, what is it you do differently? What part of your service is different than all your competitors? And there's a lot of mortgage and real estate professionals out there. So I know this can be like a head scratcher, and it's meant to be. This is the hardest question to answer for sure. Why you? Why do you matter? And ultimately, guys, your branding and marketing is useless if you don't, at the end of the day, have an exceptional product or service, like world-class service, because otherwise that customer life cycle, it's like you're starting over every single month because you're not creating those raving fans to help you go wide, so that as you go deeper with the person that you're serving right in front of you, because we know hands down the best ROI of any strategy is exceptional service and creating raving fans. Like ultimately, that is the purpose of a business. It's not to make a profit. I know that's a lot of times what we hear, but the purpose of the business is to create a thrilled or satisfied client, right? So that they continue to buy from you in the future, or you can get referrals from them. So really think about, what is it that I do differently, whether it's before, during, or after the process? And then what is that inner, whether it's your team or maybe it's just yourself, what are the guiding values of like what you're willing to do and not willing to do? I know there are people out there who it's like a race to the bottom, who can have the lowest rate possible where they're not even profitable. That is why personally, when we interview mortgage professionals, I don't like to talk about your number of units and volume, because not all loans are created equally. And some get so skinny where they're actually losing money and it's hurting the company. And they may say they helped 500 families, but were they all profitable? Are you asking for price exceptions? How many of those closings or families that you served, what's the ratio of them writing a 5-star review and then even sending you a referral, not just once, but the standard of every year? Do you plant that seed? So know that your values, it's almost like the bumper rails at a bowling alley. It's that guiding principle where for some, they are like, Deborah, I am not going to be on TikTok. Like my beliefs, my values around who owns TikTok and whatever the political values are, or just your own moral compass, there are going to be things that you're willing to do and not willing to do. And everyone's value system is a little bit different. So it's not for us to judge on how you or anyone else decides to do the business. It could be transactional, could be relational, doesn't matter. But you need to identify the core values and then really think about, how do I want to be known? What's the legacy? This kind of goes into the change that you want to create in the world with doing what you do. But also, if you had to be described in 2 or 3 ways by people, what do you want them saying about you? What's that perception? And it needs to be pretty congruent to reality. I know that we can't always, like, value is subjective and perception is based on the individual. Like we all based off I call it the 3 E's: your environment, your education, and then your past experiences. That's like bail of how we perceive things, our story. And so depending on those things, you may have triggers, good or bad, that we can't always control. We can be sensitive to, but each person has the right to have their own perception. But if we could control, and that's what social media is, that online transparency of a resume, so that people know what to expect. So when they do land on your feed and they are judging you, what is it that you immediately want them to feel, not just think? And I know loan officers, you guys are very logical beings with your numbers and black and white world with the rules. And Deb, I'm going to go and try to find the gray. So I'm going to stretch you a little bit where you've got to emotionally connect. Otherwise, an educational video or post is not going to be as memorable if you don't tug at the heartstrings of the who of the ideal client that you're wanting to serve, which we'll get to as part 2. But we got to think about, what is your inner purpose? What do you want to be known for? Why you, out of all the options? And then identity. Like, what is, if you had to describe yourself and you had to do so by listing a song or a band, what would that song or band be to best represent you? You could also say movie if you want. That helps give some insight of like your flavor, your personality. Are you a little spicy? Are you a little bit more of a rule follower? Know that this also comes out in your brand voice and tone. Like there's multiple different tonalities and frequencies to communication. Some speak in a more casual, I'm laughing because I'm thinking of myself and conversations I've recently had in the last 24, 48 hours. Also depends who I'm talking to. So, I'm going to be aware if it's an adult or child or whatnot. But would you describe yourself as a little bit more poised and professional and articulate and educated, or fun and wow and emojis and exclamation points? That's all part of brand tone and voice and crafting the identity and perception of how you're going to be seen in the marketplace. Colors matter. There's psychology in the colors that we choose, and it triggers certain emotions. And so do your colors match the feeling that you're trying to evoke in those who interact with your brand? So once you have identified who you are, and again, this is a work in progress, you're not set in stone to this. We should all be evolving and changing and improving. And there's nothing worse than, at least for me, when you get that Facebook memory from 15 years ago, and like, what was the hidden message behind the message that you posted that was a little jab at somebody or whatever? And you're like, wow, was I immature? Or did I have some growing to do? Or maybe look at how far I've grown. That is definitely me. I was that salty person and had to learn. Like that's part of why my social story is at a time when I tried to push everybody else away, and I'm good at testing and pushing, and I was crying in my bathtub, feeling alone and like I didn't belong. And the one best friend that I had was my social. And I know it sounds corny, and it was a whole different account that doesn't exist anymore, but I would tune in and I would follow like Tony Robbins and Bob Proctor and Jim Rohn and Dan Keller and Bill Hart, like all these people that helped me get out of my rut when I pushed everybody else away. And I was really unreachable to most. And I'm sure this is like shocking to some of you, because I always come on and I feel I'm like on at the moment, but I'm not always like this. And that is the aspect of, even know that your brand, like everything you do on and offline, the things you like online, the things you comment on, the way you treat the waitress at the restaurant or the title rep when you're at closing, like all of that sends signals out to people to then judge or create this perception for them of who you are, what you stand for, what you're about. And we've heard those people who you like see them on stage and they couldn't be more different when they're on stage versus when they're off stage. And it's a double life from what they say they are and do versus. So you need to be as congruent as you can with how much you are self-aware of who you are, but also give yourself permission to evolve and grow, because that's why I say this is something you should go back and revisit every quarter or every 6 months and analyze your bio, check yourself. Like, how are you doing with you? Do you take time for you? What is it that you value? Why do you value it? Is it just something that's been passed along to you by a manager or a top producer or a family member? Have you poked holes in it? Have a point of view, have a voice. Don't just be an echo. When we sound like everybody else and we use all the same hooks and it's the same and there's no emotional connection or like trigger of feelings, then you're not going to stand out. And that's part of what we're doing here. Like we need to stand out. It's a very noisy space. There's an oversupply of information. But if you don't have the experience part dialed in yet, then I don't even want you continuing to watch this video. And I know this experience can always get better, but like your best referral is sitting in the cell phone of the person you're serving right now. If you would just go deeper. And when you go deeper with those that you serve, you actually end up going wider because they become your marketing department or raving fans for you. So step one, know you. Who are you? What do you want to be known for? What's your stance? What's your voice, etc. The second part is, who is your ideal client? Who are you creating content for? What is going on in their world? Not just financially, but like, are they Gen Xers? Are they married? Do they have kids under the age of 18 living with them? Are they making more money than they ever have, but they're probably time poor because they've got kids and they're taking them to ball games or whatnot, and they're trying to both work, and could also be when the marriage is a little bit tight because now they're competing for time and they have all this responsibility. Like, what is going on in their world and what do they care about? So I want you to make a list. And if you could create a bullseye around think of your favorite client that you've served, whatever their name is, write that name down. And then maybe think of the ones that you strongly dislike. If you could never work with another client like this, they were miserable to work with, maybe put their name down and just do an initial brain dump. What did you love about that client that was your ideal favorite client? Like, I loved working with teachers and coaches because I felt like they worked really hard for their money. They get taken advantage a lot. They're pretty trusting. They're great with doing the homework with their lender application and their W-2s. Like, it was just, I attracted them because I was once a teacher. All right. Now, I was not your girl for self-employed or Schedule E's with Schedule C's and the engineers and the jumbo luxury. I'm like, we don't really speak the same language because I'm not super polished and proper, where I'm probably going to show up in jeans and a t-shirt and a ponytail, and I am who I am and I'm okay. I've learned to get better with accepting me and loving me and just knowing that I'm not going to be for everybody, not going to be vanilla. So really get granular. Like, what are their hobbies? Do they play video games? Are they pickleball champs? What kind of cars do they drive? What's their job title? Where did they go to college or not? Are they first-time home buyers? Or are they move-up buyers? And even if you say first-time home buyers, because that's what I typically hear, is I'll hear these like large demographic or client segments: first-time home buyers, move-up, downsizers, retiring, VA, you name it. The list goes up: construction, new construction, heroes. But let's just take first-time home buyers as an example. You could break that down into so many granular pieces of, are we talking about single females who, by the way, typically buy homes sooner because they want the safety and security? So this is where the emotional aspect, connecting with them quicker, knowing what drives them. Because guys, they're not buying the home. Like, really think about, what is it that they're buying? They may say the home. What does the home provide for them? Could be shelter, could be status. Americans love to have a big home so that people worship them and think, wow, they must make a lot of money, and it's respect. And that respect means love to them. So is it status? Is it security? Something that I own that someone can't take away from me? Is it safety? So I'm not in an apartment. Single males typically go more the investment routes. Not that this can't ever be flipped, but just from a why standpoint, you do need to have a little bit of psychology and studying this type of stuff to get inside the heads of the clients that you serve. But it's also just having these conversations with them. What are their motivations? What fears do they have? What's the trigger point, that the pain that's causing them to be like, I'm so done renting? Are they first-time home buyers who are partners that maybe they're not married, but they're choosing to live together? What are the things that they need to be considering that maybe they don't even know to consider? What about house hacking or co-buying with a roommate or a friend? There's so many different micro segments within the first-time homebuyer group that then could be applied to those who are moving up or those who are downsizing, depending on, is it a younger boomer or older boomer? Is it retiring and like the fear of not ever being able to retire? So y'all get my drift. It's identifying who is my ideal audience from a demographic, like location, age, married, sex, education, debts. Like, what took them so long to buy? What were the misbeliefs that they were told, or what delayed them pulling the trigger sooner, faster. All of those pieces, when you ask them, hopefully at the loan application, and you're even asking like, how long do you think you're going to be in this home? And in a perfect world, if all things were controlled, what would have to happen for you to then decide that you've outgrown the home or that it no longer suits the family needs? And then you're putting that in your CRM. So then you know how to craft more intentional messaging to your people post closing or post process. And that's something that is often not talked about in the content strategy, whether it's email marketing or classes or social. There's multiple touch points within a customer's journey with you before buying those types of messages, during and after. Not to mention the cold, warm, hot leads. There's lots of things going on here, which is why we have to talk about the who before we go to what to post or what to write or what's the hook. And when you can find out what it is that they care about, and you know what their challenges are, and you have your brain dump list, now we're going to create content that isn't just logical, but also emotionally connecting so that you can be memorable. And then the last part of the who, especially for mortgage professionals, is who are your top referral sources that are already sending you business? And then who are the ones, I can't remember the stat, I think it's like 27% of the agents control 90% of the business. That may be off just a bit, but it's like, who are the top dogs, the whales that you need to add to your favorites feed on Instagram and Facebook? Remember, Instagram right now, as of September of 2024, you can have up to 50 people on your favorites feed on Instagram. If you don't know how to set up a favorites feed, just send us an email and we'll send you the video of how to do that. It's very easy to do. Facebook allows you to only have 30. And the goal with this is, instead of creating content and hoping and praying and waiting that the algorithm is going to magically distribute your content to the people that you absolutely know you want to see it, we're going to flip that and we're going to market on offense. And we're going to do that by our engagement strategy, where we change our view. And this is on Facebook and Instagram, because these are the two platforms that most people are on, and also is great for engaging, creating community. Like YouTube's not great for community because of the lack of DMs or groups or comments back and forth. So you can switch your view to favorites where nobody knows they're in your favorites. And the who's in your favorites are those that you want to be seen by, who are the top dogs, or those who are loyal to you. And it could also be a client. Like maybe it's a client that's in every single mom Facebook group who's your raving fan. It's from an influence scale. Who are the who's that you need to be nurturing and become their biggest fan? Like, I want you to be showing up in their notifications, that little red dot. That's what people look for whenever they pick up their phone. The first thing they're doing is going to that app with the red dot that says somebody's liked or commented. That's how you can get brand visibility, by proactively putting yourself there. This is the marketing on offense, by being consistent. And the best way to do this is by going to your favorites view. This is, again, also to protect your time, because the apps are designed to feed your addiction. They want to distract you. They want to keep people on their platform as long as possible. And when you like and comment, you're also telling the platform that you guys have a relationship. And so naturally, you're going to start seeing each other's content more frequently without having to pay for it, while also being their biggest champion. So to sum that up, who are you? Who's your ideal client? Who are the people that can send you the most amount of business, so your referral partners, that you could become their biggest fan proactively by showing up in their notifications? That's it, guys. That is part 2 of this whole series of like, where do we begin? We have to have the profile set up and optimized correctly, because that is like instant conversion. So if you haven't watched that video, make sure you go back and you watch that one. This was all about the who. We got to psychologically get into the minds of those that we want to serve. We have to know how to serve them in the deepest way possible, while also know who we are, what we're willing to do, and what we want to be known for and as. And then next time, we're going to talk about the what. Like, how do you then start crafting a systematic process that's realistic with your capacity to know what to post? So stay tuned. And if you have questions, just email us, marketing@plugandplay.com. Any questions you have, there's no question that's a stupid question unless it's a no asked. That's with a K question. All right, y'all take care. Have a good weekend.